Hi, King Randor and his kids had a real ginger fetish. Think about it. Andrew, and this is Kitty's Toys. On today's MIA 80s Ladies, we're talking about what I consider a pretty major character that was never made in the 80s, and someone who might be, light on action, but very rich on, a central figure, as it were, within the Masters of the Universe timeline. That being Mother of He-Man and She-Ra, Queen of Eternia, NASA astronaut, Queen Marlena, and Captain Glenn if you nasty. Queen Marlena wasn't around in the earliest of the mini-comics that were packaged with the Masters of the Universe action figures. However, a notion of a king and queen of Eternia was bandied about quite early, and she would be introduced alongside her husband King Randor in DC Comics. They were very much, alike to what they would become. They were the ones who introduced, eventually, the notion that Prince Adam and He-Man were the same. They were very elderly in that appearance, but it was established pretty early on that Marlena was from Earth. She was an astronaut who had crash-landed on Eternia, met Randor, and became his queen. In the second wave of mini-comics, Marlena and Randor would finally kind of make an appearance. Again, starting off a little bit older, but very much the same dynamics. They would eventually be aged down, more appropriately to sort of middle age when the Filmation series likewise took off this notion. The Filmation cartoon, I think, is where she really started to shine as a character. That cartoon had a real penchant for giving redheaded women really intricate, interesting backstories, and Marlena was no exception. As early in Season 1 as Teela's Quest, Marlena was shown, again, being an astronaut from Earth. She had sort of memories of being in a shuttle that veered off course, got caught in an asteroid field, and crash-landed on Eternia. It wasn't until much later in the series, called the Rainbow Warrior, which was the name of her ship, in which she, once again, was, sort of remembering a bygone day. This time, much more expanding it, where we see the ship land, King Randor, much less hot without the mustache, meets her, they instantly hit it off, and then, the rest is history. Maybe a gross tangent, but it's interesting that, people were waiting for He-Man and She-Ra to be born, and all it took was a little bit of Earth DNA. Just saying. Back to the Rainbow Warrior episode, it features Marlena in a lot of very interesting shades, we'll say. For one thing, Skeletor had captured King Randor, Prince Adam, Captain of the Guard Teela, and Man-at-Arms, leaving the guards being just chickens with their heads cut off. It was actually Marlena who said, okay, well, I guess I'll go rescue them. She commandeers her old spacecraft, goes off into battle, and just blasts Snake Mountain to hell. During the battle, she, with frightening accuracy, hits the handcuffs that are on Prince Adam and lets him go, do, his He-Man thing. At the end of the episode, Prince Adam actually confronts his mother and says, why, of, all the options available to you, did you choose to save me? And she, ever the politician, ever the diplomat, kind of, cagily says, well, I know who my kids are, and I had a feeling you might not, know what to do here. So, very much paved the road for her damn well knowing who He-Man and She-Ra truly were, and also something that would bite her in the ass later, so put a pin in that. As for the legendary Masters of the Universe toy line, I don't really need to tell you a lot about it. We're not going to do a huge deep dive on that. However, we're here, so clearly Queen Marlena was never made in that line. It's entirely conceivable that her name was lobbed around. I mean, she was a central character in the cartoon, in the mini-comics. She was very much, a facet of it, and very much, always seen with King Randor. The fact of the matter is, two things. One, King Randor himself and the Sorceress, who is a greatly much bigger character, weren't even in the line until the bitter end. Likewise, we've never really seen concept of art of a figure of her. There was some we've seen, as per a previous episode, who would evolve into Mera and Krita in New Adventures, but Marlena was never on the table in those, kind of concept sketches. So, wasn't made. One of those characters that, people wanted, despite not being, terribly action-heavy, despite not needing an action feature, a big character in the franchise, nevertheless. Also, it's important to note when I do these lists, I do have my marketing and business hat on as well. I mean, did kids want a mom figure? Probably not. The only real, good mother character action figure out there was MILF 1 from Bionic Six. And I mean, she was, woo, like, any excuse I can talk about Bionic Six, I'm down for it, because I don't get to talk about this channel because they did everything right. Thank you so much, Bionic Six. So the final verdict for Queen Marlena is a bit of good news, but a lot of baffling, which is a bit of a running theme here. The next iteration of Queen Marlena would come very shortly after, the original run of Masters of the Universe and She-Ra, Princess of Power. She was featured in the pilot episode of New Adventures. Again, a little elderly, not really, doing much. Basically, Prince Adam came to them and said, "Hey, by the way, I'm He-Man, I'm going off to space." And they were like, "Cool." That's it. I mean, there's really no need for her to have a figure here. Case closed. After the failure of New Adventures, He-Man took a bit of a break until 2002, when there was, once again, a large push for a new cartoon and line of action figures by Mattel. It's affectionately known as 2000X. The cartoon is often known as MYP, Mike Young Productions. Both of them very much, early 2000s. There was a lot of jump-in, a lot of anime influences, very hardcore designs, but I mean, the line and the cartoon are beloved and really added a lot to the mythos of He-Man. Except Marlena. By and large, she was very much a trophy wife. There was no notion or, even mention that she was from Earth, so presumably she was a local. Likewise, especially in Season 1, she didn't really say and do a lot. She very much fit into that old archetype of just being like, "Don't mind Adam, King Randor, he's a good boy," wink. But even then, we don't even know if she knew who Adam truly was. It wasn't until probably about Season 2 when the entire line got a huge brand refresh and they introduced the Snake Man. All the characters got sexy new, just hardcore armor to battle this new threat, including Queen Marlena. She and King Randor went out for diplomatic missions quite often, and she suited up accordingly. There actually was one great episode too, where she took on two of the, bigger Snake Men and held her own pretty well. So cool. Likewise, King Randor and Man-at-Arms had a scene where they were kind of, like, "I don't know what to do, blah, blah, blah," and she was the one who really kind of put the smack down. So it definitely played more with her politics. She was definitely someone who, kind of sat back and watched more, but when the time needed it, she reacted. So she ended up being a much cooler character, but very much, a shadow of what she was. Once again, no toy here. And not terribly surprising. Not even King Randor got a toy within the proper Mattel toy line. That one sort of, went belly up pretty quickly. It did not give the numbers that Mattel was really looking for. So both the show and the toy line, according to Mattel, was a huge failure. The fans would love it, but NECA would pick up the license shortly afterwards, and they would create what's called staction figures, which, as the name implies, are essentially statues with maybe, a moving head or hand or something. Not terribly posable, but they looked like the figures. They were in the same style, the same scale, so you could slot these into your collection and beef up your team, which was sorely needed at that point. They did do a King Randor, and again, possibly, maybe Queen Marlena was on the table later on, but that line likewise didn't last very long. He-Man took a short break after this, but not a long one. In 2008, Masters of the Universe Classics came out. It was an exclusively online toy line, which at the time was brand new and sexy. Queen Marlena wouldn't make an appearance until 2015. Funnily enough, as a Comic-Con exclusive. That year, on the floor, she was offered as Queen Marlena in package. She came with parts in the box that could create her, Captain Glenn astronaut suit. Likewise in green, strictly because of, you had to use what you had. She also came with a Cringer, who is another character who this was a first. So this box did a lot of heavy lifting. Because exclusives were exclusive back then, she was offered on the Matty Collector website, this time as Captain Glenn, with parts to make Queen Marlena and Cringer. It's all semantics, and really, you get the same figure either way. That said, if you're an inbox collector, God help you, because I'm sure the San Diego Comic-Con version is wildly expensive. Nevertheless, I mean, to date, this is her only figure, and she's pretty good. It shows its age in the paint apps. It's not terribly posable. She is by and large a giant pylon with arms, but it's great to actually get this sort of little history of her within the figure. I mean, I absolutely adore it. So if you do want a 7-inch scale Queen Marlena, this is your only bet. This line would really, help cement the adult collector as a buying power, and a certain generation or two as the key demographic and audience. That said, others would try to get in, kids in the line to actually help prolong it, much like Star Wars, much like any franchise does, really. There have been a few cartoons, predominantly on Netflix. There was a She-Ra Princess of Power cartoon. There was a CGI He-Man cartoon, very much, targeted more towards kids. Queen Marlena, within the shows, was really much more nebulously referenced. Never really a character in those. She was usually dead or, presumably dead. No one knows, frankly. She was never, a key component to it. Therefore, no figure. Now, current times, time of recording. There's a lot of He-Man, and I would say really predominantly two main lines with a few others in the wings. One being Masterverse. This is once again a 7-inch scale and really kind of takes and picks from, all sorts of different iterations of He-Man. To date, Queen Marlena is not in that. However, if she were to be, it would likely be the version that we see from the Netflix series Masters of the Universe Revelations and Revolutions. In that, it's not completely a Filmation spin-off, but there's certainly a lot of components from Filmation applied to it. Predominantly Queen Marlena knowing who Adam truly was. So very early, spoiler, in season 1, He-Man died, and when Man-at-Arms had told the king did not know, and he was like, well, that sucks. But Marlena was the one who really understood the gravity of the situation, and she was the one who had to explain to not only Randor, but Teela, who Prince Adam really was, and the two of them were left shattered by that, and really, distanced themselves from the Queen moving forward. It was a great kind of full circle for her, where she wasn't really as guilty of the lie as, say, maybe the Sorceress or Man-at-Arms might be, but she knew it. And this did come, to really, bite her in the butt, ultimately. Likewise, time of recording, King Randor has just been, unveiled within the line, very much from that Revelation kind of style. So it stands to reason they might be interested in doing the Queen as well. And this is, one of those good news things where the Masterverse line is not afraid of women. I mean, from those two shows alone, there's a lot of Evil-Lyns, there's a lot of Teelas, there's a lot of different looks for the two characters, and the toy line's been, just hurriedly trying to catch up on all those. So having a separate character, particularly one who's, so ingrained in the franchise and in the mythos, maybe we'll see. Where I think Queen Marlena truly belongs is a line and a half called Origins, and also a spin-off line called Cartoon Collection. Origins is very much in the style, the scale of the vintage toy line, but with a lot more articulation built in. They are, at this point, rivaling Classics as the de facto toy line. I mean, they are really delving into just the obscure. Nevertheless, they've not tackled Queen Marlena, which I find confusing and frustrating, given how they seem so committed to really build up the world of Eternia. They often will showcase characters they have planned on packaging art, and Queen Marlena did in fact show up in the background of a Man-at-Arms package. What's kind of confusing about this, sneak peek of sorts, is that she's wearing her snake armor from the 2000X series. This is not exactly what I would call, the mind's eye of Queen Marlena in anyone's head. Certainly a cool look, certainly a toyetic look, but real weird choice. Nevertheless, if they make it, I'll take it. Vegas odds, however, are on Cartoon Collection. This is a spin-off line of Origins, little taller, very firmly in the Filmation camp. All the designs, all the colors, all the everything is very cartoon specific. They are likewise teasing a lot of characters who never got made back in the day, and I think, although Queen Marlena has not been shown yet, on packaging as a tease, she certainly fits in this realm of a collection, and I think could be slotted in your vintage toy line as well. So I think this could be it. Lord knows, in a month, 2, a year, you know, this video will be null and moot and she'll be there. But I think there is certainly a possibility for her to make an appearance, finally, in these 2 lines. And that's it for this MIA 80s Ladies of Captain Glenn, Queen Marlena, the House of Randor. So many titles, so little time. Very much an interesting character, very much, you know, a rich backstory, very much someone who, you know, is sort of quietly confident in the back, but a little smarter than she lets on. And I always find that kind of character very interesting because they have their own sort of power in their own ways. So I thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like it, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see you next time on MIA 80s Ladies.